Every morning, before the world speaks to you, your mind is already listening. Listening to yesterday's failures. Listening to regrets you didn't forgive yourself for. Listening to voices that once told you that you were not enough. That's why mornings are dangerous. Not because of what happens outside, but because of what you allow to happen inside. You don't wake up tired from life. You wake up tired from carrying a mind that hasn't healed, a soul that hasn't been respected, and dreams that have been postponed for too long. So listen carefully, because building your body takes hours, building your life takes years, but building your mind, that must happen every single morning. Before the world reaches for you, you must reach for yourself. Because every morning there is a quiet moment, so brief you almost miss it, where your mind is still yours. No notifications, no expectations, no comparisons, just you waking up into another chance at life. And the tragedy is, most people surrender that moment without even realizing its value. You open your eyes, and before your feet touch the floor, your hand reaches for the phone. And suddenly, your mind is no longer your home. It becomes a crowded street. Other people's lives, other people's opinions, other people's emergencies marching through your thoughts. You haven't even remembered your own name yet, but you already know what everyone else is doing. And slowly, silently, your identity starts to blur. See, the mind is like wet cement in the morning. Whatever steps on it first leaves the deepest imprint. If fear steps first, you walk with fear all day. If comparison steps first, you shrink all day. If noise steps first, clarity never gets a chance to enter. That's why so many people feel lost before the day even begins. Not because life is unfair, but because they never claimed their inner ground. I've watched people wake up strong and go to sleep exhausted, not from work, but from mental invasion. They gave the first moments of their day to a world that doesn't know their struggles, doesn't carry their dreams, and won't suffer the consequences of their decisions. And then they wonder why they feel disconnected from themselves, why motivation feels fake, why peace feels temporary. The truth is, if you don't decide who you are in the morning, the world will decide for you by lunchtime. Claiming your mind doesn't require perfection or some dramatic ritual. It requires awareness. It's the moment you pause and remind yourself that you are alive before you are available, that your breath matters before your productivity, that your direction matters more than your distractions. When you sit with your thoughts, even the uncomfortable ones, you begin to recognize your own voice again. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of doubt, but the quiet voice that knows what you need. This is where inner growth begins. Not in motivation videos or loud affirmations, but in silent honesty. In asking yourself, how am I really doing today? What am I carrying that I never put down? What do I need to remember before I forget myself again? Because when you wake up and immediately consume, you never create. You become reactive instead of intentional. And over time, that reaction becomes a lifestyle. Days start passing without meaning. You feel busy but empty, surrounded but alone. And the scariest part is not that life moves fast. It's that you stop choosing how to move within it. Building your mind every morning is an act of self-respect. It's telling yourself, I deserve to enter my own life before I enter everyone else's. It's understanding that peace is not found later in the day. It is planted early in the moments no one applauds. And if you can learn to sit with yourself at sunrise, even for a few breaths, even in silence, even in uncertainty, you begin to remember something powerful, that your mind is not a battlefield meant to be invaded, but a home meant to be protected. Pain doesn't arrive with permission. It doesn't knock. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It enters your life quietly sometimes, violently other times, and it always leaves a mark. And from the moment it touches you, the world teaches you the wrong lesson, to hide it, to rush past it, to pretend it never happened. But pain is not something to erase. It is something to understand. You were never weak for feeling it. You were human. Every ache in your chest, every sleepless night, every moment where your thoughts felt heavier than your body, those were not signs of failure. They were signals. Pain speaks a language most people are too afraid to learn, so they drown it out with noise, distraction, and denial. And when pain is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It waits. It settles into the corners of your mind and shows up later as anger, numbness, or quiet self-destruction. Think about the moments that hurt you the most. Not the dramatic ones people talk about, but the subtle ones. The silence after you needed reassurance. The effort that went unseen. The loyalty that was never returned. Those moments didn't just wound your heart, they reshaped how you see yourself. And instead of asking why they happened, you learned to blame yourself for feeling them so deeply. But pain is not proof that something is wrong with you. Pain is proof that something mattered, that you loved, hoped, trusted, tried. People who never feel pain never step fully into life. They stay guarded, untouched, and unchanged. Growth requires contact, and pain is often the point of contact between who you were and who you are becoming. Respecting your pain means sitting with it instead of judging it. It means letting it tell its story without interrupting. Not rushing to fix it. Not minimizing it because someone else had it worse. Pain is not a competition. It is personal. And when you finally allow yourself to feel it without shame, something shifts. You stop fighting yourself. You stop calling your sensitivity a weakness. You begin to see it as awareness. There is wisdom inside discomfort. It teaches boundaries when you've been overgiving. It teaches self-worth when you've been settling. It teaches clarity when you've been confused. Pain doesn't come to punish you. It comes to redirect you. And the lesson is always the same. Pay attention. Real healing doesn't happen when the pain disappears. It happens when you no longer fear it. When you realize that you can carry it without letting it define you. That it can exist in your story without being the ending. The moment you stop running from pain, it stops chasing you. The moment you listen, it softens. Some of the strongest people you admire are not strong because they avoided suffering. They are strong because they learned how to walk through it without losing themselves. They allowed pain to deepen them instead of hardening them, to refine them instead of breaking them. And when you begin to respect your pain, you begin to trust yourself again. Because you understand that even in your lowest moments, you are learning how to rise in a new way. There is a quiet conversation you have every day, one no one else hears. It happens in the spaces between intention and action, between knowing what you should do and choosing whether you actually will. That conversation is where your future is decided. And most of the time, the voice that speaks the loudest is not the strongest one. It's the most comfortable. It tells you to rest when you haven't earned it. It tells you tomorrow will be easier. It tells you that one delay won't matter. That voice isn't evil. It's familiar. It's the version of you that wants safety without growth, comfort without cost. And every morning, every decision, you sit at the table negotiating with it, compromising your discipline, trading long-term respect for short-term relief. But here's the truth no one likes to admit. Every time you negotiate with the weaker version of yourself, you teach your mind that your word doesn't matter, that your promises are flexible, that effort is optional. And slowly, quietly, trust in yourself begins to erode. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't shout affirmations or demand attention. It shows up when no one is watching. It's choosing to act even when motivation never arrived. It's honoring the plan you made in a moment of clarity, not abandoning it in a moment of emotion. Think about the person you said you wanted to become: stronger, calmer, focused, free. That person doesn't exist in the future. They exist in the decisions you avoid right now. And every time you choose comfort over commitment, you push that version of yourself further away. The weaker voice will always have reasons. It will explain itself perfectly. It will remind you of your exhaustion, your past failures, your fear of trying again. And if you listen long enough, it will sound logical. But logic without courage is just another excuse wearing a suit. You don't need more motivation. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. And discipline is not punishment, it is protection. It protects you from becoming someone you don't recognize. It protects your time, your potential, your self-respect. There will be days when your mind feels heavy and your body feels slow. On those days, negotiating feels tempting. You'll tell yourself you deserve a break before you've even started. But strength isn't built on easy days. It's built on the moments when you show up anyway, quietly and perfectly without applause. And here's the shift that changes everything. When you stop negotiating, you stop arguing with yourself. Decisions become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You begin to trust yourself again. Because you know that when you say you will do something, you will. That trust becomes confidence, not the loud kind that seeks validation, but the grounded kind that doesn't need permission. You start moving differently, standing differently, speaking differently, because deep down, you know you are someone who follows through. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be consistent. And consistency is born the moment you stop bargaining with the part of you that fears discomfort more than regret. So the next time that weaker voice asks for compromise, listen, but don't obey. Let it speak, then choose action anyway, because the strongest version of you is not waiting for motivation to arrive. It's waiting for you to stop negotiating and start honoring who you said you would become. At some point in your life, you learn to measure yourself through other people's eyes. Maybe no one taught you how to do it directly, but the lesson was there, in the way praise felt like oxygen, in the way silence felt like rejection, in the way being overlooked slowly convinced you that you were somehow less. And without realizing it, you handed the authority of your worth to people who were never meant to carry it. You can give everything to someone, your effort, your loyalty, your time, and still be treated like you are replaceable. Not because you lacked value, but because they lacked vision. Some people don't see depth, they only see usefulness. When the benefit disappears, so does their appreciation. And if you're not careful, you start believing that their blindness is a reflection of your worth. But your value is not a public vote. It doesn't rise with applause or fall with neglect. It is intrinsic. It exists even when no one notices, even when no one claps, even when you feel invisible. The moment you understand this, you stop performing for acceptance and start standing in truth. Think about how much energy has been wasted trying to be seen by the wrong people. How many times you explained yourself to someone who was committed to misunderstanding you. How often you shrank your voice, softened your boundaries, dimmed your light just to remain included. That wasn't humility, that was self-abandonment dressed as patience. Being undervalued hurts in a way that's hard to explain. It's not loud pain, it's subtle. It makes you question your instincts. It makes you second guess your contributions. It makes you wonder if maybe you're asking for too much when all you wanted was respect. And slowly, you start negotiating your standards just to feel chosen. But here is the turning point. The moment you stop asking, why don't they see me? And start asking, why am I still standing where I'm not valued? Because staying in places that drain yourself Worth teaches your mind a dangerous lesson that being tolerated is enough. It isn't. Self-worth grows when you stop outsourcing your identity, when you decide that being misunderstood does not mean being wrong, that being unappreciated does not mean being insignificant. Some people will never recognize your depth because they are afraid of what they would have to face within themselves. And when you internalize that truth, you begin to move differently. You no longer chase validation. You attract alignment. You stop proving and start choosing. Choosing environments that respect you. Choosing relationships that don't require you to disappear. Choosing solitude over spaces that demand you betray yourself to belong. There is power in walking away without resentment, in releasing the need to be recognized by those who cannot see beyond their limitations. That power doesn't come from anger, it comes from clarity. And clarity is born when you finally understand that your worth was never missing, it was just misplaced in the wrong hands. The moment you reclaim it, you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Most people aren't tired because life is hard. They're tired because their mind is never where their body is. They wake up already late for a future that hasn't arrived, carrying the weight of a past that can no longer be changed. And in between those two places, regret and worry, they miss the only place life actually exists. The mind has a habit of time traveling. It replays old conversations, rewrites mistakes, imagines worst case scenarios, and rehearses pain that hasn't happened yet. And while it's busy doing that, life is quietly passing by. The sun rises, people speak to you, opportunities knock softly, and you're not there to answer because your thoughts are somewhere else. Presence is not passive. It's not giving up on the future or forgetting the past. Presence is strength. It is the ability to stand fully inside this moment without escaping it. And that takes courage because the present is honest. There's nowhere to hide here. No excuses. No distractions to blur the truth. When your mind lives in yesterday, everything feels heavy. You carry guilt like a backpack filled with stones. You replay what you should have said, who you should have been, how things could have gone differently, and you punish yourself for lessons that were only meant to teach you. The past becomes a prison when you refuse to leave it. When your mind lives in tomorrow, everything feels rushed. You're always behind, even when you're moving forward. You're anxious even on good days. You can't rest because you're afraid of falling behind. You mistake urgency for purpose and business for progress. And slowly, peace feels undeserved, like something you'll earn later instead of something you can access now. But the present moment asks nothing from you except honesty. It doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't ask you to have it all figured out. It simply asks you to arrive, to feel your breath, to notice where you are, to acknowledge what is true right now without judgment. There is power in that arrival, because when your mind is present, you respond instead of react. You listen instead of assume. You choose instead of drift. Presence gives you clarity, not about everything, but about what matters next. And that is enough. Think about the moments when you felt most alive. They weren't when everything was easy. They were when you were fully engaged, when you were so immersed in what you were doing that time softened its grip. That's presence. And it's not rare, it's just neglected. Training your mind to stay present is like training a wild animal. It will run, it will resist, it will pull you back into old patterns. But every time you gently return it to now, you strengthen it, not through force, but through consistency. Presence teaches you something profound. You are not your thoughts. You are the one noticing them. And once you realize that, you stop being controlled by every fear that passes through your mind. You learn to observe without drowning, to feel without being consumed. Life doesn't need you to be everywhere at once. It needs you to be here, fully, honestly, without escape. Because when you finally stop living in moments that no longer exist or haven't arrived yet, you realize that the peace you were chasing was quietly waiting for you in the now. One day, quietly, without ceremony, you will meet the person you've been becoming. Not in a mirror, not in a photograph, but in a moment of reflection when life finally slows down enough for you to look back. And in that moment, you won't remember most of the excuses you made. You'll remember the choices, the small ones, the ordinary ones, the ones that felt insignificant at the time, but ended up shaping everything. Your future self is not built in grand transformations. It's built in whispers. In the decision to get up when no one is watching, in the choice to speak kindly to yourself after failure instead of tearing yourself apart. In the discipline to take one more step when quitting would have been easier. These moments don't announce themselves as important, but they carry more weight than you realize. Every day, you are either making life easier for your future self or harder. There is no neutral. The habits you repeat, the thoughts you tolerate, the standards you accept, they are all letters being written to a version of you that hasn't arrived yet. And one day, that version will read them. Think about how often you've said, "I'll fix it later." Later, your body will carry the cost. Later, your mind will carry the regret. Later, your heart will wonder why it feels behind. Future, you is always paying the bill for present. Use decisions, whether you acknowledge it or not. Becoming someone your future self will thank doesn't mean being harsh or perfect. It means being honest. Honest about what's draining you. Honest about what you keep avoiding. Honest about the life you know you're capable of but haven't fully stepped into yet. Growth begins when honesty replaces denial. There will be days when progress feels invisible, when it seems like nothing is changing. Those are the most important days, because consistency works in silence, like roots growing underground, strengthening before anything appears above the surface. You don't quit planting seeds just because you can't see the harvest yet. Your future self doesn't need you to have everything figured out. They need you to keep showing up, to choose long-term peace over short-term comfort, to build routines that support who you're becoming instead of habits that keep you stuck where you are, to protect your energy like it matters, because it does. There's a certain kind of pride that comes from knowing you didn't abandon yourself, from knowing that when things were unclear, when motivation was low, when no one was cheering, you still tried. That pride doesn't inflate the ego, it grounds the soul. And yes, you will make mistakes. You will stumble. You will choose wrong sometimes. But your future self isn't asking for perfection. They're asking for effort, for forgiveness, for resilience, for the courage to begin again without shame. Imagine meeting that future version of you, not successful or perfect, just at peace, able to breathe without carrying the weight of regret, able to say, "You did the best you could with what you knew, and you kept going." That peace is not gifted. It is earned in moments like this one. So today, choose in a way that honors tomorrow. Speak in a way that strengthens later. Act in a way that builds trust with the person you are slowly becoming. Because one day, when you finally stop running and start reflecting, you'll realize you've been becoming them all along. So if the world is loud right now, let it be. You don't need to answer every voice that calls your name. Some battles are won by walking away. Some growth happens in silence. Focus on yourself, not because you're selfish, but because you're responsible for the life you're building. Because no one else will protect your peace the way you must. Because the version of you that survives distraction will never meet the version of you that thrives in focus. There is strength in being unseen, power in being underestimated, and freedom in no longer explaining who you are becoming. Let them watch from a distance. Let them misunderstand. You have work to do within. Choose discipline over noise, presence over approval, action over announcement. And when the world finally notices the change, you won't need to explain it. You'll just be living it. Focus, build, become.